Well, hello and welcome to all of our viewers from around the world. I'm Fiona Lang-Sharp, IBCLC Director of Communications and MC here at Gold Learning. Well, welcome to joining us here today. We are talking all about our Gold Midwifery Online Conference 2023. It is right around the corner, beginning on February 6th. Now, that's a very important date. Mark it on the calendar. For most of you, it will be on the 6th. I must say that just because everyone's in a different time zone, and we're going to be talking to Bernadette Lack in just a moment. She's going to share about her time zone in just a few moments. But I want you to head over to the website right now. It's going to be super important that you stay connected with us, goldmidwifery.com. That's going to bring up all the details of this up and coming event, also with some of those important dates that you need to mark on your calendar. So just be assured that all the dates and time zones are marked on our website. You'll be able to, just tune in right away and know what time the presentations are and what day they're on as well. So I assure you that's all set up for you and ready to go. Well, welcome to Bernadette Lack. It's so good to have you here. Bernadette, you're going to be speaking at an upcoming conference here, Gold Midwifery Online Conference 2023, and you're going to be live. That's very exciting. Welcome.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. I'm just so excited to be in this space.
Oh,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad. We know how busy you've been with doing all sorts of wonderful things. But why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself formally, and let folks let them know where you are in the world and, of course, what you do.
So I am a midwife in Australia, and I'm on the sunny coast in Queensland. So in the nice, hot, warm beaches. I think the, kind of picture that people think of in Australia, that's where I am very privileged to live. I have lived all around the world. I've lived in the USA and, the Pacific Islands, but Australia was where I was born and bred and where I've predominantly worked. So I'm a midwife. I have an epic husband and I have two amazing boys, and mostly amazing. Often they're my biggest challenge and my greatest reward.
Of course, right? They come to us to drive us and do also, they change us in so many ways, do our children, and we reevaluate all the time. And as you mentioned, you've been busy, right? You've been busy moving and doing all sorts of amazing things again.
Yeah, we've just moved house, and I was solo parenting without furniture, and we're selling houses, and it's a crazy time. My eldest has just started school, but I think as parents we think it's our job to guide them, but they are really our guides. They guide us into what we need to learn about ourselves. So there's been big things happening, lots of big feelings in our house at the moment, but I'm super excited to get back into work and be in this space with you all.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, reading your bio today, you have an extensive background in midwifery, and I know you have your master's in public health, but you specialize now, it seems anyways, I know you can tell me more about it, but pelvic floor is really your specialty. Tell me what the driving factor there was for you and how you got into that area of care.
I think with most things that people get into, especially after they've had children, right? Because often once we have children, there's a change in career or a change in perspective. But I did it for me. I never, ever expected to be doing what I'm doing now. But I was incontinent from the age of 19, and I kept that as a dirty little secret. I never told anyone. Even as a midwife, I would talk to people about incontinence. But I never did anything about my own. And until I was about 30. So I would only leak urine when I sneezed. And then as I progressed throughout my 20s, it happened when I coughed as well. But I was a marathon runner, and it never happened during exercise. So I don't know whether I thought that was like I was safe or something, but I just didn't do anything about it until I reached about 30, 31, and we decided to try and start to conceive our first child. And my husband still at this time, we'd been together for probably about 8 years at that stage, and he had no idea that this was happening to me. No one did, not my parents, no one. And so I took myself quietly off to see a pelvic floor physio, and they told me to do Kegels and to stop running and not get pregnant for a while, for a few months, and I'll be right. Well, I wasn't right. And I spent my whole first pregnancy covered in urine and vomit, basically. And it was incredibly traumatic, really. When I think back at think back about it now, at 18 weeks, I asked my midwife for a termination, and I never would have gone through with it. But I was really speaking of where I was at, which was, I can't do this anymore. And that was at 18 weeks.
Wow.
I continued to vomit until I was 30 weeks pregnant. And at the time, I was doing publicly funded home birth. So when you're at a person's house, and I had, the urine pads, if anyone's had to wear them, they're like, when people say, I caught a fish and it was this big, like the urine pads feel like they're like this big, and they're massive surfboards. And to get rid of one of those that is completely soaked is incredibly hard to do at someone else's house. And so I would wear these pads and they would soak up, and then the urine would run down my legs, and my legs were so excoriated. There was just, they were red raw from the urine. And I would only be able to wear long skirts, and everywhere I went, I had to have changes of clothes. And I just lived like this. And I thought that that was my new norm, really. And I kind of did what most people do when they have issues like this, is they disconnect and disassociate. And then I went into fear, which is, I was kind of like, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. But then I was like, how am I going to birth my baby? And I was planning a home birth, and I was like, I can't even sneeze. How am I going to birth? Long story short, I went on to have an epic home birth of my first baby. And afterwards I was like, this isn't right. If I can do that, I can heal. And so I'm a published author. I love research, and I host a podcast called The Great Birth Rebellion. And we, dive into the research on all our current practices. And so I was like, well, what are people doing around the world about this issue? Kegels never made sense to me. I am really big I love the exercise world, and my first degree was in sports psychology. So I love the kind of mind and body connection. And it just did not make sense that we would just squeeze the muscle and release it and then everything would be okay. And it didn't make sense to me that we would just isolate in one area of the body. So I did a whole lot of research, and I basically developed Core and Floor Restore for me. And then 6 months postpartum was the first time I hadn't been incontinent for a solid amount of time for my whole adult life. And then I went back into the exercise world as a postpartum woman, and I realized that the exercise world isn't really designed for our bodies. And, and the whole mentality of the exercise world, like drop and give me 20, you can do it, push harder.
Right.
It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us as we age as women, especially as we enter, perimenopause and then menopause as well. And, I'm becoming really passionate about those areas as well, because so many women, and I work with women in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and they've never healed from pregnancy and postpartum. No one holds this postpartum space. So I went and I became a personal trainer, and I started running classes in my community. And the more I was like, if you leak urine, you can do a star jump like this. And if you have diastasis recti, you can, do core exercises like this. And this is what you need to look out for. And the more you put that into conversation in a class, the more every woman starts to come out of the woodwork and tell you her story.
Yeah.
And so I realized there's so much theory that we miss out on as girls and women about our bodies and how they work, because of how sex ed is designed, but basically how we live as a community. We've been robbed of so much knowledge and wisdom that we used to get when we lived in a much more connected community than what we do now. And we were a part of women's business, like when I lived in a village in the Solomon Islands, you saw women, because you saw women free bleed, you saw women birthing, you heard them, you smelt it, you were around it from a child. Most people entering their first birth these days, they've never seen birth, let alone heard it or smelt it or been around it. People having their first babies, they've never changed a nappy. They're like, or a diaper, they're like, what? I don't know what to do.
So many things, right? So many firsts.
So many things, that we've been robbed of. Like when I was in the Solomons, there wasn't an hour of the day that went by where a child wasn't around me. And that was even at work. That doesn't happen in our life. We can go 15 years without being around children unless we're working with them specifically. And so I developed Core and Floor Restore as a theory and an exercise program to give back people knowledge, but to also change the culture around the way we think about exercise and the way we think of our bodies, because our culture is, especially in the West, is very designed to value appearance over function. And I really want to value function over appearance. And so I created Core and Flora, and everyone in my community felt like everyone did it. And then I had some key people that were like, you need to do this online. And so I created the programs at the end of 2019 to go online. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, my other big passion is birth trauma and decreasing it. And I was like, I was living in Victoria, which was the most locked down place in the whole of Australia and the whole of the world. We had the most lockdown days in the whole of the world. And I was like, they stopped antenatal classes. No one could go to antenatal classes. And my first thought was, this is going to increase birth trauma. And so I jumped on Facebook and I ran free antenatal classes, and they went viral. They went worldwide. They're still watched now. They went we went 8 weeks. They went for probably about 10 or 12 hours. And I went through everything. And because of that gave me a lot of online presence. And then people found my courses.
Wonderful.
And then from that, what I do now is a lot of one-on-one consultations around birth trauma. I'm going to be training people to do birth trauma debriefing this year, because we're now starting to recognize it and obstetric violence and the need for debriefing, not just for people that have experienced trauma, but for all people. So I do a lot of that online. I do a lot of workshops. We run the podcast, and then I have the online programs, and then I do a lot around the motherhood space, and holding space in motherhood. So that was a very long answer. I gave you my life story.
That's Bernadette in a nutshell, folks listening in. It is so good, but it's so good to hear people's stories. That's how we learn. You're obviously a storyteller, and I appreciate that so much. I feel like I just really got a snippet though, and that's what it's about today. And for all of you listening in, we want to invite you back to come and meet Bernadette at the presentation live, of course, at our Gold Midwifery Online Conference. GoldMidwifery.com is where you want to be right now. You need to go click on that. If you could relate to this story, you want to know more, you want to learn about all of these experiences that Bernadette has had, and now, also learn about the pelvic floor, the midwife's role in core and pelvic floor health during the perinatal period, is the presentation title that Bernadette will be speaking to. And I know that this topic is very important. I was going to say a couple of things, Bernadette, just in response. The isolation that women still feel today, this is still not talked about enough. It's still not mainstream. It's still sort of pushed aside, not discussed prior to birth, let alone after birth. We really need to start having really good conversations. And I'm really hoping that you will bring some of that scripting and tools to all of us here at Gold. I'm excited that you're going to present on this topic once again, and, open us up to many of these challenging conversations that maybe we have our own things going on as well. But I'm excited that you're going to be here just educating us in all of these things. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm just so excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So thank you so much to Bernadette for being with us here today. And of course, to all of you, don't forget to join us online at goldmidwifery.com. Our opening keynote is going to be on February 6th. So please log into the website. That is going to be a free and open access event. We'll be excited to see you online there for sure, and joining us for the full conversation here at Gold Midwifery. All the presentations will be recorded for your convenience, but of course, come and join us live, and you can participate in a lot of live chat and of course, Q&A with Bernadette and all of our other presenters here at Gold Midwifery. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Bernadette. And of course, to all of you, our audience, we'll look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Bye-bye for now.